First of all, I would like to apologize for the clickbait, but I wanted you to find this video in a post-Jordan Peterson YouTube. I'm pulling another late night at work here. Figured I'd knock out a video before going home. See you guys. You're definitely asleep. I love you guys. Because I love you, I won't bore you with another one of my lectures on evolution. And I figured I'd kill two birds with one stone and talk about the evolutionary origins of patriarchy, and one of my favorites, Jordan Peterson. I love Jordan Peterson, and he's become kind of an inspiration, not just to me, but to millions of other people. And it almost feels like a cult of Peterson moment. But I'll save that for another video and my concerns about that. However, I feel he's a little off base on this topic, and when talking about patriarchy, he's wrong. And how he interprets patriarchy, he commits a logical fallacy almost the same way that he claims atheists do by how they interpret the Bible materially, instead of attacking it or criticizing it on a symbolic or philosophical level. When saying there's no such thing as patriarchy, or that patriarchy is the equivalent of modern civilization, Peterson is giving too much credit to the Post-Modernist, Social Constructionist interpretation of patriarchy, and by not arguing the real role of patriarchy and how it played a massive role and impact on human evolution, he's doing a disservice. Jordan Peterson is falsely equivocating patriarchy as an abstract social construction, like a social structure based on the postmodernist interpretation, when he should be instead arguing for patriarchy as a material or biological basis. What Peterson needs to do is promote the Great Father, like he has been doing, the Great Father, the tyrannical father. He needs to promote the Great Father as monogamous patriarchy, and the role it had in shaping humanity in a successful way, and it being used as an evolutionary adaptation. Instead, he falls into the postmodernist trap of all patriarchy is bad, and really what they're describing is the tyrannical father, as Jordan Peterson describes it, which is polygamous patriarchy, and how that definitely has a negative impact on civilization, and there's a reason why the more successful countries have adapted monogamous patriarchy. And Peterson is partially correct when he describes the hierarchical system in which men compete, breaking it down as a hierarchy of competence. And because of this, I should say, Western civilization works as well as it does, and it's a miracle. But Peterson is missing an aspect of where the patriarchy came from, and its evolutionary origins, in human self-domestication, and the sexual reproductive strategies that shaped and became such a success, and that's to thank for monogamous patriarchy. Human evolution adapted multiple forms of patriarchy as a means for successful reproduction. The first and the oldest adaptation being polygamous patriarchy, we inherited that from our promiscuous tribal ancestors who, in a tournament style of reproductive strategy, were where females really would mate with multiple genetically fit males to reproduce healthy offspring. But there was no paternal investment provided. And the whole tribe acted as the family because paternal knowledge wasn't known. However, the newer, more successful adaptation is monogamous patriarchy, which humans adapted as part of evolutionary game theory, and that at some point within the last 20,000 years, I'm guessing, when population density became a limiting factor for low-ranking males, that created an imbalance in reproductive success for the majority of the population, and at which point women chose low-ranking males who offered resources in exchange for the possibility of sex for the chance to reproduce. These same evolutionary reproductive strategies can be found in our primate ancestors, based on the same environmental factors, and a great resource for that is watch Robert Sapolsky's Stanford lectures. They're great. So while Jordan Peterson understands that in order to select the most successful mates, women must choose the males who compete in a dominance hierarchy, he said that before, and that part is partially correct, and that he only incorporates the reproductive strategies of our polygamous tribal ancestors who did not adopt pair bonding, really, because humans remained in small bands of hunter-gatherers for thousands of years. And I shouldn't say polygamous, it was more of promiscuous or tournament style. Definitely dominance hierarchical driven. But for thousands of years, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years, they were like that, wandering around in Africa and stumbling out a few times to find out what lies beyond. But really, not until stumbling into really the Garden of Eden, or Dilmun, as it's known in the ancient Sumerian tale of Enki and Ninursag, who were the original Adam and Eve. But my hypothesis about the story of Adam and Eve and them being a representation of the first monogamous union, and that there actually was a Garden of Eden, which is now mostly under the Persian Gulf in modern-day Bahrain, that can wait for another video. One of Peterson's mistakes is that he falsely equivocates that women primarily choose males who compete in a dominance hierarchy. And he associates that as something that's really the primary focus of women, but really that's like a remnant of the short-term strategy of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Modern women, who after human self-domestication have actually chosen the long-term reproductive strategy of selecting a male who competes in a competence hierarchy, which Peterson actually describes. He relates it as Western civilization or the Enlightenment. But thousands of years ago, women chose monogamous patriarchy as it provided the best success for healthy offspring over polygamous patriarchy. And that included adopting a game theory of strategic mating based on self-rated attractiveness. Women chose the following values in a mate. They chose And this is what they saw in the great father patriarch, the values that they wanted in that monogamous patriarch. They wanted genetic fitness, first and foremost, because they want to pass a healthy offspring. They want a male who will make provision for not only them, but their offspring. They want, and that includes, I guess you'd say, that's parental investment. But parental investment goes a little bit beyond that, because it can also include, how they pass on the values to their kids, hard work, certain ethics. And then women also look for partnership quality. How good the male is going to be to them. Are they going to be physically abusive? Are they going to treat them well? Those are the four main categories, really, that define monogamous patriarchy and define what women are looking for in the great father patriarch. Women chose the right strategy in monogamous patriarchy, and when I say chose, I mean it more as an involuntary byproduct of natural and sexual selection under environmental pressures. However, unless under need of resource or under external influence, one of our ancestors, female ancestors, a long time ago, made the conscious decision to have sex with a low-ranking male who mate provisioned and provided resources, and that set off a chain reaction that started civilization. In fact, without if our female ancestors never chose monogamous patriarchy, humans never would have self-domesticated, adopting the proper, really game theory strategy for mating. And you wouldn't have an evolution in certain aspects of our aggression, our intelligence, language, culture, romantic love, art, war as a means of economic resource gains, and maybe most importantly, you wouldn't have, without women choosing monogamous patriarchy, you wouldn't have individuality. We'd still be tribal. So really, what I think Peterson should do is direct his response towards patriarchy as it was a biological necessity that women chose, and which women still prefer, because women still look for those four main qualities, and that's what he should be doing, is kind of directing it in a different way, because right now he's just kind of using their version of patriarchy, which isn't correct. It's like me, complaining about Christians believing in a 6,000-year-old earth, and that there really was an Adam and Eve came from Adam's rib and all that stuff, and they take it materially. That'd be like me making that same false equivalence instead of looking at it on a symbolic level. He's doing it the opposite. So anyways, it's just my thoughts on the two subjects of evolution and the origin of patriarchy, and Jordan Peterson's use of it. Anyways, I'll leave the links below. Thank you guys. Love you guys. Clean your room and go to bed. Good night.